Good afternoon, everybody. Joe from NDB Aviation, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Honeycomb Aeronautical Bravo Throttle Quadrant. And specifically about the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, we're going to talk about accessing the autopilot panel, the switches, and reading the Annunciator panel. But we'll also touch on, depending on where you place the Bravo, can you get to the landing gear lever, can you get to the pitch trim, and the flaps switch on the far right-hand side. I know it's slightly out of view, and I'm going to pick it up in a minute and kind of talk about a little bit of this. But this video is going to be mostly about the Bravo and accessing all of the switches and reading the Annunciator panel. But there will be parts of this video that could be applied and used with other devices, other throttle quadrants, and applied in thought process as well to setting up your entire flight sim setup. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's start talking about the Bravo Throttle Quadrant and how to best access the switches and get to the Annunciator panel and read it so that way you're able to use it to its fullest potential. So first off, when we're talking about the Bravo Throttle Quadrant or any flight simulator setup that you're going to have, it's important to go ahead and plan out your setup. Now, right now I have it in Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. I have it on a very large desk. So it's easy to plan this one out and really think about how it's going to work for me, even before I got my Bravo Throttle Quadrant. But let's talk about two things that I think everybody should think about when you're setting up your home sim setup. First off, plan it out. Get an idea of how large the products are that you're going to use. Think about the desk you're going to have. Are you going to have your own desk? Are you going to buy a new desk, a table? Are you going to build a custom setup to make it more like an actual cockpit? Are you going to make a pedestal design to put the Bravo Throttle Quadrant on so it mimics an actual jet aircraft? Or are you going for a GA aircraft setup that's going to be single engine, non-complex? You know, there are a lot of variations to the Bravo that you can really use it for, and then, you know, use it to its fullest potential and maximize your training purposes if that's what your goal is, or maximize your time in sim to make it the most enjoyable experience you can have. So first off, plan out your sim setup. Another thing to think about with your planning is, where's your computer going to be? How are you going to route all of your cables? And are some cables going to be so short that you need extenders? Are you going to have to move something around to a different place on your desk? And then is that going to ruin what you were planning already? So there's a lot to think about and ways to fix some of those. Me personally, I always use a USB hub that is separate from the computer. I've dealt with motherboard attached USB hubs in the past when I was working for SciTech and doing air shows. There was one air show where we had the USB controller that was on the motherboard fail. We threw in another piece to actually give ourselves an expansion slot. That failed. And then it was a lot easier just to solve the problem by having a USB hub itself using one USB port. Not perfect, but it worked. And I like that because it allows me to really fine-tune exactly where my planning and placement is going to be. And that brings me to my second point. Placement of all your peripherals. And that's the Bravo, your yoke or joystick, flight panels that you might be using, radio panels, so on and so forth. Plan out what all the parts are going to be. Think about how they're going to fit on your table or desk. And then when everything comes in, start placing it. And this is before you even start up the flight simulator. So I know this is going to be no fun for some people. And I know you want me to get to the nitty gritty and the main point of this video, but this is something I think is important that everybody should think about, especially if you're new to flight simulation. Get all your parts out, set them up where you think they're going to go, see how it works. You yourself might find that because of the chair you have, because of the table you have, whether your chair is too high, too low, the table's too high, the table's too low, maybe your arms are too short with the chair you have and the table you're using. All these different factors come in for ergonomics and placement of all of these things that will either enhance or degrade your flight sim experience. So think about all that, because planning plus placement equals your best overall access to the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, whether it's the switches, the axes, the pitch trim, or reading the Annunciator panel. So for me, the Bravo Throttle Quadrant has not had any major issues when it comes to accessing the switches. So I'm pretty happy with it. I think even with the commercial setup on top, which is the most restrictive, because I'm going to hold it at an angle here, and looking almost straight on, you can see that the reversers are covering up the annunciator panel. Now keep in mind, this is only at maximum power that you're going to have this issue, because most likely you will be looking at the Bravo Throttle Quadrant from an angle and above. And depending on which angle you're at, you might have a better view. But once you come back to, say, climb power, you've reset it, you have another viewpoint that's better, and you have also better access to the switches on top and the autopilot panel. Also going across, you have a lot better view and overall access to the pitch trim, the flap switch, and the landing gear lever. And when you come back to maybe cruise power, everything gets better yet again. So the main issue that you're going to have with accessing the switches will be on max takeoff or maximum power. So I'm going to hold on to the clamp here on the back. I'm going to put my hand on top. So when I'm flying at max power, say I need to turn off the lights, I'm going to take my hand and reach over and use the tips of my finger to flip that switch. Now the good thing is, if you use a label maker and make labels for the top here, you'll still be able to read all of your titles for each one of these switches if you've given them different things that you haven't memorized, or maybe you're just doing a generic profile and you know that maybe the far left is always going to be your lights or something else. So you have options here for customization. But again, with the commercial setup, I go over the top to get to my switches. I thought about leaving this clamped down to the desk, but I didn't think that would really demonstrate the best viewpoint on this. Reading the annunciator panel is not too bad for me because, one, I'm a little bit taller and I'm almost always looking down on the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. Now, currently on my desk, I'm using a book to raise the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. This was a gift to me years ago. Great book, Pilot Weather, from solo to the airlines. If you're looking for a read to put you to sleep or learn more about weather, this is a good one. It's also a really good riser for the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, just that right amount, especially for shooting videos. But access to the switches is not so bad. So I just go over the top, push my finger over, and I'm flipping switches. Not ideal, but it can be done. Reading the annunciator panel from different angles is not perfect, but it is still doable. And getting to everything else overall, there are no major blockages or issues that prohibit me from getting across the Bravo, say to the flap switch, because I can either go over the top or just come around the side. And then if it's on my left-hand side, it's not difficult to get to the pitch trim or the landing gear lever because there's a lot of space still left to right. And it doesn't matter whether it's at cruise or if it's at idle or max power, I still have good access on the left or right-hand side of the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. So, wrapping this all up, I think the Bravo Throttle Quadrant does a really good job of still allowing access left or right to anything on either side of the unit. Getting to the switches, yes. It's not preferred that you're using your fingertips to get over the top and start switching switches, but you can get to them. You can get to the autopilot panel at max power, whether it's the GA setup or the commercial setup. And the only major caveat that I'm really seeing right now, the annunciator panel. Can you read it 100%? No. But the second you come back to climb power or you come back to cruise power, you're going to be able to read the annunciator panel. Now, some people, you might think this is annoying, and as a flight instructor and as a pilot at a regional airline, there are a lot of times where annunciator panels are great, we need them, we use them, but I want to say this much. At full power, especially in a regional aircraft or a cargo aircraft or some other airliner, you have two pilots for a reason of things, multitudes of reasons, really. But the pilot flying is going to fly the airplane. The pilot monitoring is going to work on the checklist. The annunciator panel will be useful, but in your flight sim personal use, reading the annunciator panel the moment something goes wrong, especially on takeoff, is not your primary concern. Your primary concern is going to be fly the airplane, fly the airplane, fly the airplane, okay? So, is it a deal breaker you can't perfectly see the annunciator panel? No. Is it annoying at times? Sure, especially with the reversers, but I'd much rather have these reversers than not have them and deal with the slight annoyance of not seeing everything on my Annunciator panel. So I hope this video helped. The Annunciator panel is working, the switches are working, the autopilot's working, and given each update with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, maybe one thing may kind of go here and there. I know I just got the VR update, or whatever the update was for the first week or second week of January. Everything's working great. You can go to Honeycomb's website to download the driver for the lights on the Bravo, and I'll put that in the description below. X-Plane 11 is working just fine as well, and you have the configurator as well that works on top of X-Plane to really build in the profiles that you want and have everything work perfectly to your desires and needs per aircraft, which is great. So a lot of functionality is growing for the Bravo. Things are moving along nicely. And wrapping it up, can you get to the switches? Yes. Is it going to be the same muscle memory as the aircraft? No. Can you get to the autopilot panel? Can you still read the autopilot panel? Yes. But that could also be determined to be better or worse depending on where you place the Bravo and the angle it will be at. Reading the Annunciator panel is easy at idle. Well, of course, it's really easy at reverse, but idle, cruise, reduced climb power settings, but difficult at max with the commercial setup full forward because the reversers get in the way. So that's the full wrap on this. Joe from NDB Aviation. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, leave them down below. If you like the video, like and subscribe. Thank you for your time. Stay safe, stay healthy out there. See you again real soon. Bye-bye.